Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for my card today I decided to create a watercolor background for my mermaid image from Honeybee Stamps. So I started off with some Canson XL Watercolor paper, and I have taped it to my little Epicurean cutting board, and I chose this cutting board because it is heat resistant, so I can use my heat tool and I'm not going to have to worry about like the board getting too hot or warping or anything like that. So I've taped down my watercolor paper with some Scotch painter's tape, and then I pulled out my Gansai Tambi watercolor set and then just sprayed some of the blue colors in the palette with water to kind of activate the colors. And then I mixed up one of the blues with a lot of water, so it was just a very light wash, and just did a light wash across the whole piece of watercolor paper, which is a large flat brush. Then sped that up with my heat tool. The heat tool isn't necessary. You can let things air dry. You could even use a hair dryer when it comes to watercolor. I just use the heat tool to speed it up because I don't have patience. So once it was dry, I added a layer of just clean water, only along kind of the lower and like left side of this piece. I kind of wanted it to look, I was thinking of almost like how the surf comes up along the shore sort of a thing, and water splatter, and I was more than everything just kind of experimenting here. So I did this in layers. I've super sped this up, but I was just doing layers of this color. And then when I did the second layer and it was still wet, I pulled out my Finetec Pearlescent watercolors. They're kind of metallic-y shimmer watercolors. And I added in just drops of some of the really bright gold, and then there's the two kind of aqua blue colors. So drop those in, and then I'm going to dry this again. And sometimes I was using a little bit of paper towel to kind of sop up that extra water. One, because it helps it dry faster, and two, because if there's too much water, it starts to like run and just kind of create a smear. So once that layer was completely dry, I went in and added some splatter, of course. So I added some of the blue splatter, and then I added a bunch of the gold splatter, and then I added a little bit of that aqua splatter as well. And you'll see in a minute when when I hold it up to the light, just the shimmer, it's so pretty. So this was just fun. Like just experimenting to see how the colors would move around, and yeah, just to create a fun, different sort of background. So after I'd done that, I had stamped several images from the Under the Sea stamp set onto BRISTOL smooth cardstock. And I'd used Hero Arts Intense Black ink. And I'd actually done this a while ago with the intention of coloring them with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. But since I already had these Gansai Tambi colors pulled out and used them for my background, I decided I wanted to try using them to color in these images. So the BRISTOL Smooth does work for watercolor. I was just trying a little bit harder not to overwork the paper, because I found if I was working it too hard with my papers, like going back and forth over the same spot, it would start to rough it up a bit, and I think it would have started to pill. So I tried to keep the coloring as simple as possible. I mixed up a couple different browns and added a tiny little bit of red to create the color I used for the skin. And did a couple layers of that, and then added a little bit of pink to her cheeks, and then cleaned that out with a clean my brush, and then kind of wiped that out a bit so it wasn't like those bright red patches you saw there. And then I added some of the aqua color to her hair, and I didn't really like how it was just one color, so I went in and added some purple, just because she's a mermaid and it's fun. And then watercolored all the different areas of her. And then when I was done, I mixed up that really super bright gold from the Finetec palette again, and was picking that up with my brush and just painted it onto the mermaid tail. And then I added some to the lid, and I'm picking it up here with my dotting tool and just dotted that all along her hair, just for fun little shimmery elements. Because again, like I said, when this catches the light, the shimmer is amazing. So all these little fish images and a little crown from the set, I decided to just color in with those Finetec Pearlescent watercolors. So I used the purple on the seahorses, and it looks kind of just flat and almost like just a very blah color when it's just as is. But the minute you turn it into the light, it shines purple. It's so pretty. So I've filled everything in with those watercolors, and because they are so pigmented and metallic, same with the Gansai Tambi, it kind of obscured some of the lines of the stamping. So I went completely overboard. Normally I would never do this because it did take a while, but Once I started, I couldn't stop. I was using my COPIC Multiliner, the 0.03, it's a very fine tip. And I outlined the crown first because I'd completely obscured the details of the black outline. And then I, went over her face and I couldn't stop. I liked how much better it looked with the black lines popping more. So I went over the entire image. I basically just kind of sat and zoned out and just traced over the stamped lines. So to completely bring out the image again, because a lot of it was obscured by the watercolor. So once everything was outlined, I am going to tape into place the coordinating dies for all of these images, making sure they're lined up, and then I'm taping them into place with micropore tape because I do not want these to move when I run them through my die cut machine, because after I went to all this work coloring them in, that's the last thing I want is the dies to move, and then I end up cutting things wonky and would have to restart. So I lined everything up, all the coordinating dies, taped them in place, ran them through my die cutting machine so that everything was die cut. And then I also die cut some white cardstock and some gold glitter cardstock using the Honeybee Hugs Honey Cuts dies. And I'm going to stack all those together, and I just use some multimedia matte adhesive. Squeeze that along the larger areas of the die cut, and I stack the 2 pieces of white cardstock, and then I top that with the glitter word die cut. The whole time I was making, painting the images and everything and doing the background, I was thinking about using a die cut word and using gold glitter. So that's why the gold watercolor and everything, just to kind of tie it all in together. So I had trimmed down that watercolor piece once it was completely dry to just slightly smaller than an A2 card front. And I adhered all of my little images and my sentiments to this card base, just flat to the card base so it could adhere to it. Just using pressure, and at some points I was putting acrylic blocks over everything just to hold it in place while it dried. So I adhered my little mermaid, and then I adhered the crown on her little head, and then the sentiment, and then I'm going to tuck in those little fish and the seahorse. And then I want to go on to creating the inside of my card. So I have some just heavyweight white cardstock that I cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5 1/2, so it'll be a top folding A2 size card. And the sentiment is from the Swimming By stamp set. So I inked up the Swimming By stamp with some teal colored ink. And then the rest of the sentiment I inked up with that same Hero Arts Intense black ink, just to give it that little extra something something. Stamped on the inside, and then I had these 3 remaining, the 2 little fish and the little seahorse. So I'm going to adhere those to the inside of the card. And you kind of see, as it catches the light, how they just shine. It's just fun. So I adhered those to the inside of the card, and then I'm going to adhere my card front to the card base with the same Nuvo adhesive that I was using before. So just making sure to apply a decent amount, but not too much, because I don't want it oozing out the sides. Plus I don't want too much adhesive, otherwise the card base will start to warp. And then for my final embellishment, I pulled out my Nuvo gloss white crystal drops, and just holding the bottle straight up and down, adding quite a few dots, because again, I can. And with the white outline on all the images, I thought I just kind of tied it all together a little bit more. So all different size dots, depending on how long you hold it over the cardstock. You can create larger ones, or I would barely touch the tip to the card to create really tiny little glossy dots. And then I have to set this aside to completely dry. So let it dry for several hours, and then it's good to go. So that's it for my card for today. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will have links below the video to the blog post with links to all the supplies used if you're interested. So just check out the description box below the video if you want any of that information. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!